What's up, my fellow Suzuki scaries? This front end, man, it gets me every time. I'm going to be doing rotors and pads. There's not a whole lot of information on doing these style rotors, so I figured I'd make a video. There are on the floating rotors, which are extremely easy. Those are like a no-brainer. But these ones take a little bit of work, so I'm going to show you how to do these particular ones. And this is going to be very similar to the Daihatsu Hi-Jet as well. They're the bolt-on style rotors, not the floating rotors. Let me show you real quick. So I got for this customer Brembos, and these are the kind that bolt onto the hubs. They're very yeah, they're just more work. It's like the floating rotors are the best. They slide off and on. Those ones require a little more stuff. So let's go over the tools that you're gonna need. So I got the hub puller attachment onto a slide hammer. So get yourself this style attachment. Amazon all day. It's just, or you can rent it from your local parts store. It's just a hub puller slide hammer attachment. You're gonna need a torque wrench, a 1 3/16 socket. I don't have millimeters. It might be 22 millimeter socket. It's a big axle nut, but 1 3/16 when you're in that size, metric and standard is not a huge deal. Get yourself a good pry bar. You're going to need that unless you have an extra body to press on the brakes while you try to torque everything back. I got caliper grease. I also have bearing axle grease, so I can put some grease back up in there. You don't need a pollito, although they will eat the bugs when they're bugging you and knock your tools over. I got pads from Japan, so we're gonna put our new pads in. Yeah, jack it up. Let's get the wheel off and let's get going. Okay, so once you have your wheel off, you're gonna have your axle nut. We don't need to separate anything quite yet. Well, let's just focus on the axle nut. So you're gonna need some pliers so you can get your cotter pin out. Try to salvage it unless you have an extra one laying around. I don't, so I'm going to salvage that cotter pin. Then we're going to break the nut off, and then we're going to remove the caliper, which is 2 17 millimeter bolts on the back side. It's down here, down there, and then I have my caliper hanger, and then we'll get that all out of the way. So let's work on that. Okay, so I guess I'll just record this stuff. But, ow, man, that hurts. The cotter pin has been safely removed. It's just a little boogered up. That's okay. We can take a hammer and just kind of flatten it out. No big deal. Or you can just replace it, but these are still good. So now, let's take our axle nut off. Now, the trick to doing these axle nuts, that's why I say leave your caliper on right now, because if you have an extra body, you can have someone go in there and hold the brakes down as hard as they can, and then you can use like a breaker bar and take that axle nut off. They're on there pretty good, so there's that option. Leave the caliper on, have a body in there, break it off. Here's another option. Take yourself a really big pry bar, put it in between a couple of the studs, and then, you know, use that to lock the hub in place. You're not gonna damage anything. I see people complaining about damaging threads on your studs. Yeah, I've been doing this style for a very, very, very long time, and I have never ruined any of my studs. And even if it did booger up the threads a tiny bit, you can always chase them. It's not like you're gonna break them. I mean, I suppose you could break them if they were on their way out in their existence of life anyways, but get yourself a good 1/2 inch impact, and then you don't have to worry about it. That'll break it right off. So like I said, 1 3/16. You have a washer in there as well, so be sure to save your washer. Set that aside, don't lose it. Here we go. So take note, these particular washers are not like concaved or crush washers or lock washers or anything. they're flat washers, but let's say you're doing a sandbar or something, they're actually like bowed a little bit, so then when you tighten it down, obviously it flattens it and pushes against the axle nut and keeps it from backing out. So it will say like out or in on the washer, and obviously the out would be facing out, but these are flat, so we don't have to worry about that. Now we can take the caliper off. So like I said, it's a 17 millimeter. So let's go ahead and take our caliper off. $117. Okay, that has been removed. Now I'm going to get my caliper hanger, and let's hang the caliper out of the way. We'll deal with the pads a little bit later. Let's just focus on the rotor for now. So this is the fun part. This is where you're going to need your slide hammer and your attachment to pull the hub out because it is stuck inside. Let's take our tool. These are handy to have, but if you don't think you'll ever use it again, you can rent one of these from like AutoZone or something. I will most definitely be using this again, so it just makes sense. I think I paid like 30 bucks for 2 different styles in the same kit off of Amazon, which is pretty good, I feel like. Now this is where we're gonna use our brute strength, brothers. Yeah, and we pull that out. So now we can, let's see, I don't want to set the hub on the ground because I don't want to booger up any of that. So I'm going to use this spare tire. Let's take our tool off. So came in very handy. And we're going to need the axle grease because I'm actually just going to reapply grease inside there. And then reapply grease on the inside of here, just so our bearings are happy. Now, you're gonna need a 14 millimeter, and the 14 millimeter is going to separate our rotor from our hub. There we go. These rotors look pretty good, but when you would come to a stop, there was a lot of like pulsing in the brake pedal, so they're obviously warped. Now let's reinstall our bolts for the rotors. I'll put a little blue Loctite on these guys just because we don't want them coming loose. And then we'll run them back on with the impact at like a medium setting. I don't want to go too crazy, just tight. All right. New rotors attached to our hub. So I'm just going to take my axle grease, which I need to get some more of this stuff, and I'm just going to run it on the bearing race. I believe that's what it's called, the race. And then I'll run a little bit inside on the balls, get the balls all greased up. That sounds weird. And you can be generous with it. You don't like leave gobs of grease in there. Just give it a good layer of grease in there. Run it inside. It's kind of a tight squeeze, so if you got fat fingers, you might not be able to get them in there. You could use a grease gun and pump the grease in there. That would probably work really good too. It does not hurt to put some more grease in there, especially after 30 years. And I like the Mobile One red synthetic grease. That I've had this can for like probably 20 yees, so I finally ran out. Had that grease a long time. I bought it when I had my Ford Festiva, and I had to do rebuild the CV axles on the Festiva, which I feel like I've reincarnated that car with that Mira TRX-X I just got. I am so, feels like I'm back in my Ford Festiva days. I love it so much. It's ridiculous. Okay, so now let's carefully put this back on. Let's pay attention. Don't be knocking it around in there because we don't want to be screwing up the bearings inside. So let's go ahead and slide it on. It's going to go in the splines. And then we'll take our axle nut. If there's enough thread with the axle nut and the washer, go ahead and put the washer on. If there isn't, don't worry about the washer. You can reinstall the washer. But now let's put our hub back on. So I'm just gonna do this slowly so I don't, jam it on there if something's not correct. So get yourself a, ratchet. And you can hold the hub by hand. It's not going anywhere. And carefully run it back on. Actually, let's just go ahead and torque it. So get your torque wrench. 134 foot-pounds. I'm gonna turn it out my way a little bit so I can get good leverage. So 134 foot-pounds. And if it's good and it lines up with the hole on the castle nut to put your cotter pin back through, awesome. If it doesn't line up, just tighten it till it lines up. Don't loosen it. So I can get my cotter pin back in. And then what I like to do is I'll try to zoom in so you can see it. What I like to do is take the long end. Take the long end of the cotter pin, fold it back over the axle nut. Take like a hammer, tap it, and then the smaller end you can tap it in. That way that castle nut cannot come loose. Okay, so now that we have that all good and back together, let's go ahead and do our brake pads. Okay, so these brake pads are a little bit different than, at least the typical ones. I think these are more like Mitsubishi. You have the 3 dimples on these guys, so it's basically held in by this metal prong, like metal spring deal. So we'll very carefully, because we got to reuse this thing, we'll go ahead and just pry it off the dimple. So we're going to reuse this guy, so don't ruin that guy. Throw out the old pad, and then you actually have a brake shim on the back that you will remove from the old pad. Don't get rid of that guy, save it. And then I'm going to get a C-clamp, and then we can press the puck back in. Okay, get yourself the C-clamp. This is a 4-inch C-clamp. It's the right size for most calipers. And let's go ahead and run it back in. Leave the old pad on there because that's what we're going to use to push against the puck or piston, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so go ahead and get that pushed in there. Now we're going to pop the old pad out. I'm just going to get this off here. You can take a little pick, put it in behind the pad, and push up. Boop. That'll pop out. Very easy. Now, these slides are working pretty good. So I'm not going to take it apart. I'm not worried about that. But if your slide isn't working and you want to re-grease them, there's an Allen bolt on this side, and that will allow you to take the slide out. Then you can take this whole assembly apart and re-grease the slides and put it back together. But like I said, our slide's working, so I don't see that. being necessary, but if it's stuck, that would be how you take this apart and get the slides out. So now, with that apart, I'm going to take the inner pad, which does not have the dimples. I'm going to put a little bit of put a little grease on the back side of it, and then we're going to put it on the posts. And then we're going to go ahead and slide that in there. Very easy. So that one's in there. And then the outer one, again, very easy to do. We'll put a little bit of grease around the outer dimples, just so it holds the brake shim on there. So we'll reinstall our brake shim. And the grease will hold it so it doesn't fall around when we're messing with it. And then we'll put our clip or holder back on there, our spring clip. Press that on there. Then we will slide that up. It will slide into our dimple holes, the holes in the caliper. There you go. Bingo. Now we have our pads in. Now we can go ahead and get our caliper mounted. My little nipple cover came off. Our booby tassel. And if you spread out, if you push the puck in far enough, it should slide right back on without touching the rotor. Put these guys back in. I'm actually going to put a little bit of Loctite on these. And these guys just, put some strength into them. They're big bolts. It's meant to hold your calipers on there, so use some strength to tighten those bolts up. I do not know a torque spec, but just tight. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Tight. Okay, so we got that torque to 134 foot-pounds. Got these guys all back on there nice and tight with Loctite. Re-greased up inside for the bearing. Put the caliper bolts back on with a little bit of Loctite. New pads, new rotors. Cotter pins reinstalled. So everything should be good. And then we just bolt the wheel up. 85 foot-pounds and for the lug nuts, and that should be good. And then you would check your brake fluid reservoir. Make sure you're not overflowing. Make sure you don't have, you should have a little bit more than what you did before because we got new pads on. So if you needed to remove some so it didn't spill out, adjust accordingly with that. But there you go. That's how you do rotors and pads on the bolt-on style rotor for the Suzuki Carry. Not all Suzuki Carries are like this. If it is a floating rotor, it's very, very easy. You can watch my video on the Suzuki Wagon R. Those are floating rotors. Those are ridiculously easy. Don't require any extra tools or nothing to do. So cool. There we go. So if this is something that you need to do, mostly it's pads. Like changing rotors on a Suzuki Carry is like kind of a rare thing to do. But if you happen to need to do rotors because you're getting a little wobble when you hit the brakes because they're warped or whatever, or you just want to do new rotors, there you go. I will have a set of those Brembo rotors on my website along with brake pads. I think I'll have to check, or maybe they're not on the website and I'll have to add them to the website. But anyways, I will have a set of those on the website if that is something that you would like to do. Not that difficult. You just need that slide hammer and the hub puller attachment to get the hub out. But yeah, cool. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. I will see you all on the next one.